when I discovered my husband had secretly given our entire $200,000 emergency fund to his mother for her RV adventures. I was furious. But when I learned he was dying of liver cancer and still choosing her over me, I realized I had the perfect opportunity for the most devastating revenge of his pathetic life. He called me heartless for questioning where our money went, but what he didn't know was that I'd already filed for divorce and was about to let him discover just how expensive dying without a wife can be. Before I walk you through this whole mess, please do me a small favor. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It always amazes me to see how far these stories reach. And honestly, knowing there are people out there who understand what I went through means everything to me. Now, let's get back to my story. My name is Emily Bennett. I'm 45 years old. I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized investment firm. And 6 months ago, I discovered my husband had been systematically draining our life savings to fund his mother's fake lifestyle while hiding his terminal cancer diagnosis from me. It all started on a Tuesday morning in March when I went to First National Bank to withdraw money from our emergency savings account. David and I had built up exactly $347 over 7 years of marriage, our safety net for medical emergencies, job loss, natural disasters, whatever life might throw at us. We'd been so careful, so disciplined. Every tax refund went into that account. Every bonus I earned from work. Every dollar we could spare after paying our mortgage, utilities, groceries, and basic expenses. The bank was busy that morning, typical Tuesday rush. I waited in line behind an elderly man who was arguing with the teller about some fees, tapping my foot impatiently because I had a conference call at 10 and needed to get back to the office. When my turn finally came, I handed over my ID and account information to Sarah, a young teller I'd seen before. "I need to make a withdrawal from our emergency savings," I said. "About $15,000. My husband's car needs major repairs, and we don't want to put it on credit." Sarah pulled up our account on her computer, and her face changed completely. The professional smile disappeared, replaced by a look of confusion and then sympathy. "Mrs. Bennett," she said gently, lowering her voice, "I'm showing the current balance in that account as $8.47. I laughed because it had to be a mistake. "That's impossible. We had over $200,000 in there last month. Can you check again?" Sarah's fingers flew over her keyboard, checking and double-checking. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Bennett, but the records show the entire amount was withdrawn on March 3rd. That's 3 weeks ago. The transaction was made by David Bennett with proper identification and authorization." My legs went weak. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "March 3rd? That's impossible. David was at work that day. He never mentioned withdrawing anything." Sarah printed out the transaction record and handed it to me. There it was in black and white. $200,000 withdrawal, authorized by David Stephen Bennett, processed at 2:47 p.m. on March 3rd. The same day I'd been in meetings all afternoon, completely unaware that our entire financial safety net was disappearing. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" I shook my head, took the paperwork, and walked out of the bank in a daze. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start my car. That money represented everything. Every sacrifice we'd made. Every vacation we'd skipped to save money. Every time I'd clipped coupons, bought generic brands, driven my car an extra year instead of trading it in. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of building something together, and it was all gone. I sat in the bank parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at that transaction record, trying to make sense of it. Maybe there was an emergency I didn't know about. Maybe David had invested the money somewhere better. Maybe he'd moved it to a different account and forgotten to tell me. But deep down, I already knew. I knew exactly where that money had gone. I drove home slowly, my mind racing through every interaction I'd had with David over the past month. Had he seemed nervous, guilty, different in any way? But honestly, David had been acting strange for months. Defensive about money, secretive about his phone calls, increasingly hostile whenever I asked about our finances. I found him exactly where I expected to, stretched out on our leather sectional sofa in the living room, watching some documentary on the History Channel, a half-empty beer bottle on the coffee table next to him. He was still wearing his work clothes from his job at the county assessment office, his tie loosened, his shoes kicked off. Just another ordinary Tuesday afternoon for David. "Hey," he said without looking up from the TV. "You're home early." "David," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and level. "I just went to the bank to make a withdrawal from our emergency fund. The account is empty." He froze for just a second, and I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt? Fear? But then he covered it with annoyance. "What's your problem, Emily? So what if I moved some money around?" "Moved some money around?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. "David, that was $200,000. Our entire emergency fund. Our entire safety net. What happened to it?" He finally turned to face me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never noticed before. Something cold and calculating that made my stomach clench. "My mom needed some help, all right? She's family. She raised me alone after my dad died when I was 12. She worked 2 jobs to put me through college. She's 66 years old, and she wants to enjoy her retirement. What's wrong with helping her live a little?" "Some help?" I felt my voice getting higher, more desperate. "David, that was $200,000. That was our money. Money we saved together. Money that took us 7 years to accumulate." "It's my money too," he snapped, his voice getting harder. "I work 40 hours a week, don't I? I contribute to this household. I pay half the mortgage, half the utilities, half everything. If I want to help my mother enjoy her golden years, that's my decision to make." "But you didn't even tell me," I said, and I could hear the pleading in my own voice. "We're supposed to be partners, David. We're supposed to make these decisions together. That money was for emergencies. For us. What if something happens? What if one of us gets sick? What if you lose your job?" David's face darkened with anger. "What if, what if, what if? You're always worried about something, Emily. Always expecting the worst. My mother deserves to be happy. She deserves to see the country, to live her dreams while she still can. And if that bothers you, then maybe you need to examine your priorities." Before I could respond, I heard the familiar sound of the front door opening. My heart sank because I knew exactly who it was. "David, honey, I'm back." Linda's voice echoed through the house, that same syrupy sweet tone she always used when she wanted something. Perfect timing. My mother-in-law, Linda Bennett, had been living what she called the RV lifestyle for the past 3 years. Ever since she retired from her job as a receptionist at a dental office, she claimed she was finding herself on the open road, living her dreams, seeing America the way it was meant to be seen. She showed up at our house whenever she needed money, wanted to do her laundry, or felt like stirring up drama between David and me. Linda walked into the living room carrying 2 large shopping bags from expensive stores I recognized. Nordstrom, Williams-Sonoma, some boutique jewelry shop downtown. She was wearing a brand new outfit. Designer jeans that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in 6 months. A cashmere sweater. Leather boots that looked like they'd never touched pavement. Her hair was freshly styled. Her nails professionally manicured. She looked like a woman who'd just spent a fortune on herself. "Oh, Emily, dear," she said with that fake concerned expression she'd perfected over the years. "You look upset. Is everything all right between you two?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by those perfectly styled shoulders and shake her until she told me the truth. Instead, I forced myself to speak calmly. "Actually, Linda, I just found out about the $200,000. For just a split second, her mask slipped. I saw something calculating flash across her face before she recovered and put on her wounded victim expression. "Oh my goodness," she said, pressing her hand to her chest dramatically. "David, you told her? I specifically asked you not to worry Emily with this." David shifted uncomfortably on the couch. "Emily's making a big deal out of nothing, Mom. I told her you needed some help with your retirement plans, but she's acting like it's the end of the world." "Help?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Linda, he cleaned out our entire emergency fund, every penny we'd saved in 7 years of marriage, without saying a word to me." Linda sat down in the armchair across from us and folded her hands in her lap, the picture of elderly innocence. "Oh, my dear, I had no idea this would cause problems between you two. Emily, sweetheart, I'm just an old woman trying to see the country before I die. David was just being a good son, helping his mother fulfill her dreams. Surely you can understand that." "What I understand," I said, my voice getting sharper, is that good sons don't steal from their wives to fund their mother's vacations. David's face flushed red with anger. Steal? That's my money too, Emily. This is my house, my marriage, my family, and I'll spend my money however I damn well please. Linda jumped in quickly, her voice soft and reasonable. Now, let's not fight about this. Family is everything, Emily. Blood is thicker than water. Someday, when you're my age, you'll understand what it means to need your children's support. David is just being loving and generous. I stared at both of them, and suddenly I felt like I was looking at strangers. The man I'd married 7 years ago wouldn't have done this. He wouldn't have stolen our life savings behind my back. He wouldn't have chosen his manipulative mother over his wife. The woman who'd raised him had twisted him into something unrecognizable. I need some air, I said, grabbing my keys from the kitchen counter. Where are you going? David called after me, but his tone was more irritated than concerned. Out, I replied without looking back. I drove aimlessly through our neighborhood for over an hour, my mind spinning with rage and disbelief. 7 years of marriage, and this was what it had come to. David had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. He'd stolen our future security and given it to his mother without even having the decency to discuss it with me first. But as I pulled back into our driveway, I noticed that the living room window was open, and I could hear voices inside. I turned off my car engine and sat quietly, listening. You handled that perfectly, Linda was saying, her voice full of approval. Women like Emily need to be kept in line. She'll get over it once she realizes she doesn't have a choice. I know, David replied, and his tone was completely different now. Casual, almost amused. She's just dramatic, always making everything about her feelings, like she's the victim of something. Your father used to say the same thing about difficult women, Linda continued. Sometimes you have to show them who's in charge. Emily thinks she has equal say in this marriage, but she needs to learn her place. The thing is, Mom, I've been giving you money for years, and she never noticed before. She's not as smart as she thinks she is. They both laughed, and the sound made my blood run cold. Well, she certainly doesn't understand family loyalty, Linda said. I raised you by myself after your father died. I sacrificed everything for you. It's only natural that you'd want to take care of me now. Exactly. And if she can't accept that, then maybe she's not the right woman for me. I sat frozen in my car, listening to my husband and his mother discuss me like I was a problem to be managed rather than David's wife and partner. They were talking about years of secret financial transactions, about manipulating me, about my place in the marriage hierarchy. I wasn't David's equal. I was an obstacle to his mother's comfort. That night, I lay awake in bed next to David, planning my next move. I needed to know exactly how bad this betrayal was. How long had it been going on? How much money was really involved? What else had David been hiding from me? The next morning, while David was at work and Linda was out shopping for more expensive clothes, I called First National Bank and requested detailed statements for all our accounts going back 3 years. I also called our financial advisor, our insurance company, and our mortgage lender. If David had been hiding financial transactions from me, I was going to find every single one. What I discovered made my blood run cold. David hadn't just stolen our emergency fund. He'd been systematically draining our accounts for almost 3 years. I spread the bank statements across my dining room table like evidence at a crime scene, using my financial analyst training to trace every suspicious transaction. It started small, $500 on June 15, 2020, listed as family emergency. Then $1,000 on July 3rd for Mom's car trouble. Money I'd never noticed, because I trusted him to manage our joint checking account while I focused on our long-term savings and investments. But as I traced the pattern month by month, the amounts got larger and the excuses got more elaborate. August 2020, $3,000 for Mom's medical bills. September, $2,500 for RV park deposits. October, $5,000 for emergency RV repairs. A repair that supposedly happened while Linda was visiting us, sitting in our living room perfectly healthy. I remembered that October weekend now with crystal clarity. Linda had called David crying about her broken-down RV, stranding her somewhere in Nevada. David had rushed to wire her money while I was at a work conference. When I'd asked about it later, he'd brushed it off as just helping Mom get back on the road. But Linda had been in our guest bedroom that entire weekend, doing laundry and raiding our refrigerator. The pattern became sickeningly clear as I worked backward through 3 years of statements. January 2021. $10,000 for mom's emergency medical treatment. The same month, Linda had bragged to me about passing her annual physical with flying colors. March 2021. $8,000 for upgrading to a safer RV. Money wired the day after Linda had shown me Facebook photos of her new luxury coach that she claimed was a gift from a generous friend. Every transaction told a story of lies layered on top of lies. I found ATM withdrawals for cash that David had never mentioned, always in round numbers. $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. When I cross-referenced the dates with my calendar, I realized they'd happened during Linda's visits to our house. She'd been taking cash directly from our accounts while sitting at our dinner table. The amounts escalated dramatically in 2022. February, $15,000 for Linda's travel emergency when she supposedly got stranded in Arizona. May, $20,000 for unexpected RV maintenance. August, $25,000 for what David had told me was a one-time down payment on mom's dream RV. Each withdrawal had come with David's earnest promises that this would be the last time, that Linda would pay us back once she got settled. I pulled out my laptop and created a spreadsheet, something I should have done years ago if I hadn't been so trusting. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, David's explanation. Column D, what was really happening? As I filled in each row, my hands shaking with rage, the scope of the deception became overwhelming. The final entry was the $200,000 emergency fund withdrawal on March 3rd. The money that was supposed to save David's life, handed over to fund his mother's kept boyfriend. I calculated the running total and stared at the number until my eyes burned. $287,439. Nearly $300,000 stolen from our marriage, our future, our security. But there had never been any payback. Only more requests, more emergencies, more reasons why Linda needed our money. I found email chains where David had promised me Linda was working on paying us back. But when I searched our account records, not a single dollar had ever been returned. The total amount was staggering. Over the past 3 years, David had given his mother nearly $300,000 of our money. Not just the emergency fund. That was just the latest and largest theft. He'd been bleeding us dry for years, and I'd been too trusting, too focused on our future, too busy with my own career to notice that my own husband was robbing me blind. I was still processing this betrayal, still trying to figure out how I could have been so blind, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Martinez's office, David's primary care physician. "Mrs. Bennett, this is Dr. Martinez. I need you to come in as soon as possible. It's about your husband's test results from his physical last week." My heart jumped. "Is something wrong?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you be here this afternoon?" An hour later, I sat in Dr. Martinez's office staring at medical reports that changed everything. Blood tests, imaging scans, biopsy results. The words seemed to swim on the page. Hepatocellular carcinoma. Advanced stage. Aggressive progression. Poor prognosis. "Your husband has late-stage liver cancer, Doctor," Martinez said gently. "It's quite advanced, I'm afraid. We're looking at stage 4, with some spread to nearby lymph nodes." The room seemed to tilt around me. How is that possible? David seems fine. He goes to work every day. Liver cancer often doesn't present symptoms until it's quite advanced, the doctor explained. David mentioned he's been feeling tired lately, some loss of appetite, occasional abdominal pain. He attributed it to stress at work. "How long does he have, Doctor?" Martinez folded his hands on his desk. "Without treatment, probably 6 to 8 months. But there is hope. If we can find a donor match and move quickly with a liver transplant, his prognosis improves dramatically. The 5-year survival rate with a successful transplant is about 70%. My mind was reeling. David was dying. My husband of 7 years was dying, and he didn't even know it yet. "Dr. Martinez, I need to ask you something. If David gets on the transplant list, how much will this cost? What are we looking at financially?" The doctor pulled out a folder thick with insurance forms and cost estimates. "With your current insurance coverage, You're looking at approximately 150 Saislers to $200,000 out of pocket. That includes the surgery itself, post-operative care, anti-rejection medications, follow-up treatments. If there are complications, the costs could go higher. $150,000 to $200,000. The exact amount we'd had in our emergency savings account. The money that could have saved David's life. The money he'd given to his mother for her fake RV lifestyle. Mrs. Bennett, are you all right? I looked up at Dr. Martinez, and I'm sure my face was white as paper. Doctor, when were you planning to tell David about this diagnosis? I was hoping to call him in tomorrow, but I wanted to speak with you first so that you could be prepared to support him through this. This kind of news is always devastating for families. I need to ask you a favor, I said slowly. Can you give me 24 hours before you tell David about this? I need some time to process this information and figure out how to handle it. Of course, Dr. Martinez said. This is overwhelming news. Many spouses need time to absorb the diagnosis before they're ready to support their partner through it. Thank you. And doctor? When you do tell David, I think it would be better if you told him alone first. Let him process it privately before involving me, doctor. Martinez looked surprised. Most couples prefer to hear this kind of news together. Are you sure? I'm sure. David values his independence. He'll want to digest this information on his own terms before discussing it with me. That was a lie, of course. The truth was, I needed time to decide what I was going to do with this information. David was dying, and he'd made sure we couldn't afford to save him. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. I drove home in a complete daze. David was going to die, and he'd spent the money that could have saved his life on his mother's lies. The same mother who just spent the afternoon buying designer clothes, while her son's liver was slowly destroying itself. That evening, I watched David eat dinner, completely unaware that his body was betraying him. Linda sat across from him at our dining room table, bragging about her latest travel plans, while David hung on every word like she was describing adventures in paradise. I found the most beautiful RV park in Colorado Springs, she gushed, cutting into the expensive steak she'd insisted we buy for dinner. It's right at the base of the mountains, with views that'll take your breath away. The owner, Frank, he's such a sweet man. He said I could stay as long as I want. That sounds incredible, Mom, David said, his eyes bright with vicarious excitement. How much does a place like that cost? Well, it's a bit pricey, Linda admitted with a theatrical sigh. $200 a night during peak season. But honey, you only live once, right? And at my age, I don't know how many more chances I'll have to see places like this. $200 a night. I did the quick math in my head. She was burning through our money at nearly $6,000 a month, just on accommodation. Add food, gas, activities, shopping, and she was easily spending $10,000 to $12,000 monthly of the money David had stolen from our emergency fund. That's totally worth it, David said enthusiastically. You deserve to enjoy yourself, Mom. You worked so hard for so many years raising me. Of course, I couldn't do any of this without my generous son, Linda said, reaching across the table to squeeze David's hand. You've given me such a gift, honey. The freedom to live my dreams, to see the country, to finally do all the things I never got to do when I was working and raising you alone. She turned to me with that fake, sweet smile. Emily, you're so lucky to have a husband who understands the importance of family. Not every woman marries a man with such a generous heart. I wanted to throw my wine glass at her perfectly made-up face. Instead, I excused myself and went to the bedroom. I needed to think. David was dying. We had no money for treatment because he'd given it all to his mother, and neither of them showed any remorse for what they'd done to me, to us, to our future. That's when it hit me like a lightning bolt. I had a choice to make. I could be the loyal, supportive wife. I could tell David about his diagnosis, help him fight to find money for his treatment, mortgage our house, go into debt, sacrifice everything to save the man who'd betrayed me. Or I could let karma handle this one. The next morning, I made my decision. I called Dr. Martinez's office. Doctor, I've thought about it overnight, and I think you should tell David about his diagnosis when I'm not there. This is something he needs to process alone first, without feeling like he has to manage my emotions at the same time. Are you absolutely sure about this, Mrs. Bennett? This is going to be devastating news for him. I'm sure. David values his independence and his privacy. He'll want to process this information and make his own decisions about how to handle it. After I hung up, I called my boss and took a personal day. Then I drove across town to my parents' house. My mom and dad had been married for 42 years. They'd raised 3 kids, survived job losses, health scares, financial struggles, and every challenge life had thrown at them. They were the kind of couple I'd thought David and I would become, partners who faced everything together. "Mom, Dad, I need your help with something," I said, sitting down at their kitchen table, where I'd done homework as a child, where we'd had family dinners for decades. My father, a retired police detective with 30 years on the force, looked up from his morning coffee. His cop instincts were still sharp at 70, and he could read trouble on someone's face from across a room. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You look like you've seen a ghost." I told them everything. The missing money, the years of betrayal, the cancer diagnosis David didn't know about yet. By the time I finished, my mother was crying, and my father was pacing around the kitchen like a caged animal. "That son of a bitch," Dad muttered, his face red with anger. 7 years of marriage and he pulls this shit? And his mother, that manipulative old witch, has been playing him like a violin. "What do you want to do, honey?" Mom asked gently, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I want to know where that money really went," I said. "Linda claims she's been traveling all over the country in her RV, living this amazing retirement lifestyle. But something doesn't add up. Dad, you know how much a decent RV costs. Even a really nice one is maybe $100,000, $150,000. David has given her almost $300,000 over 3 years. Where's all that money going?" Dad sat down across from me, and I could see his detective brain kicking into gear. "You want me to investigate her? Please. I need to know what I'm dealing with before I decide my next move." "Consider it done." 3 days later, Dad called me at work with news that would change everything. "Emily, you need to sit down for this." "What did you find?" "Linda Bennett hasn't been traveling anywhere. I've checked every RV park in a 500-mile radius, cross-referenced her supposed routes with credit card records, called campgrounds she claimed to visit, even checked social media posts from other travelers. There's no record of her staying at any of the places she's described to you and David." My heart started pounding. "Then where has she been?" "Living with a man named Eddie Rodriguez and his 26-year-old son Danny in a rented house on Maple Street, about 15 minutes from your place. She's been paying their rent, groceries, utilities, car payments, everything. She's essentially supporting 2 grown men with David's money." The room seemed to spin around me. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "I have photos, bank records, utility bills, witness statements from neighbors. Your husband's money, the money he stole from your joint savings, has been funding another family while he thinks his mother is living her dream retirement." "How long has this been going on?" "Near as I can tell, about 3 years. Right around the time she supposedly started her RV lifestyle. Emily, this woman has been running a con game on her own son." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall of my office, trying to process what I'd just learned. David had chosen his mother over me. His mother had chosen her boyfriend over him. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that it took my breath away. That afternoon, David came home early from work. I was sitting in the living room when I heard his car in the driveway, and I knew immediately that something had changed. His footsteps were slower, heavier. When he walked through the front door, his face was pale and his hands were shaking. "Emily, we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. "I went to the doctor today. Dr. Martinez called me in for some follow-up tests." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Emily, I'm sick. Really sick." He sat down on the couch next to me and told me everything. The cancer, the need for a transplant, the timeline we were facing, the treatments available. I listened without saying a word, watching him struggle with this devastating news. "But here's the thing," he said. And for the first time since he'd walked in, his voice had a note of hope. "The good news is we have that emergency fund. I know I gave Mom some money recently, but that was just a small part of what we've saved. We'll be able to afford the treatment. We'll be okay." I stared at him. This man I'd once loved. This man who was dying and still didn't understand what he'd done. "David," I said quietly, "you gave her all of it. Every penny. There is no emergency fund." His face went white. "That's not possible." The money I gave Mom was maybe 20 or 30,000 over the past few months. We had over 200,000 saved. Check the bank statements. You've been giving her money for 3 years. She's taken almost $300,000 from our accounts. David grabbed his laptop from the coffee table and logged into our online banking. I watched his face crumble as he scrolled through 3 years of transactions. Withdrawal after withdrawal, transfer after transfer, all going to Linda. "This can't be right," he whispered. "She said she just needed help getting started with her RV lifestyle. She said she was going to pay me back once she got settled." "There's more you should know," I said, pulling out the folder of information my father had gathered. I spread the photos across our coffee table. Pictures of Linda entering and leaving the house on Maple Street. Pictures of her with Eddie Rodriguez, a man in his 60s with gray hair and a beer belly. Pictures of them grocery shopping together, holding hands like teenagers. "Your mother hasn't been traveling, David. She's been living with her boyfriend and his son. Our money, the money you stole from our emergency fund, has been supporting her kept man while you thought she was seeing the country." David stared at the photos like they were written in a foreign language. "This is Eddie Rodriguez. He lives at 247 Maple Street. Your mother pays his rent, his groceries, his utilities, his son's car payment. She's been supporting 2 grown men with our life savings." "No," David said, but his voice was weak and uncertain. "She wouldn't lie to me. She's my mother." "She has been lying to you, David, for 3 years. Every story about RV parks and travel adventures and seeing the country, all lies. She's been playing house with another man using your money." David's hands were shaking as he picked up his phone. "I'm calling her right now." I listened to him confront Linda, his voice getting stronger and angrier as the conversation progressed. "Mom, I know about Eddie. I know about the house on Maple Street. I know you've been lying to me about everything." I couldn't hear her response, but I could imagine it. The victim act, the tears, the guilt trips she'd perfected over the years. "Don't you dare!" David shouted into the phone. "Don't you dare try to make this my fault. I gave you everything I had, and you've been supporting another man with my money? While I'm dying?" He hung up and looked at me with eyes full of regret and desperation. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was lying to me. I thought she was just trying to enjoy her retirement. I never meant for this to happen. Sorry doesn't bring back $300,000, David. We'll figure this out. We'll get a loan against the house, or I'll take out a personal loan, or—" "No," I said, standing up and walking to the bedroom. "We won't." I came back with the divorce papers I'd had my lawyer prepare that morning. "I'm leaving you, David." His mouth fell open. "You can't be serious. Emily, I'm dying. I need you." "And whose fault is that?" I asked, my voice as cold as ice. "You chose your mother over me, over us, over our future. You stole our life savings and gave it to a woman who's been lying to you for 3 years. You made this bed, David. Now you can die in it." "Emily, please. I'm done. I've already filed the papers. You'll be served tomorrow." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers, mediators, and David's increasingly desperate attempts to reconcile. He'd call me at work, crying and begging me to come back. Linda would show up at my office, making scenes about how I was abandoning her dying son. David's sister flew in from California to try to talk sense into me, but I held firm. During our divorce mediation, I presented evidence of David's financial abuse, the systematic theft of our joint savings over 3 years, the domestic violence incident when he'd slapped me during one of our fights about money, an incident I'd documented with photos, and a police report. "Mrs. Bennett," the mediator said, "given the circumstances you've described, what are you seeking in this divorce settlement?" "I want the house," I said simply. "David can keep his pension, his 401k, and whatever debt he's accumulated. I'll take the house and walk away clean." David's lawyer started to object, but David stopped him. "Fine, give her the house. Just please, Emily, don't press criminal charges for the money." "I'm not pressing charges, David. I'm just leaving." What David didn't know was that I'd made another decision, one that would define the rest of his very short life. The day before our divorce was finalized, I called Dr. Martinez. "Doctor, I need to discuss David's status on the transplant list." "Of course. We're still looking for a compatible donor, but he's been moved up in priority given the aggressive nature of his cancer." I want him removed from priority status. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Bennett, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. There's a 7-year-old girl named Sarah Chen who needs a liver transplant, isn't there? I read about her case in the newspaper. Give David's priority status to her. But Mrs. Bennett, David could die without a transplant. Doctor, my husband spent our entire life savings on his mother's boyfriend while lying to me for 3 years. He chose his family over ours. Now I'm choosing that little girl over him. Another long pause. This is highly unusual, Mrs. Bennett. Are you absolutely certain about this decision? Completely certain. Move David to the bottom of the list. Let someone who deserves to live get that liver. After our divorce was finalized, I watched David's life spiral completely out of control. Without me managing his medical appointments, his diet, his medications, he deteriorated rapidly. He tried dating, posting pictures on social media with some woman Linda had introduced him to, probably another one of her schemes to find someone to support them. But even in the photos, you could see David was getting sicker by the day. Linda, meanwhile, kept demanding money. When David couldn't provide it anymore, she grew desperate and started calling me directly. Emily, honey, I know we've had our differences, but David is dying. He needs help, and I can't afford to take care of him and Eddie, too. Then maybe you should choose which man is more important to you, Linda. You don't understand. Eddie has health problems. His son Danny is trying to get through college. They depend on me. And David depended on you, too. Look how that worked out. Linda started showing up at my new apartment, banging on my door, screaming about how I was letting her son die. I called the police and had her arrested for harassment. The call came on a Thursday morning in November. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. Mrs. Bennett, this is Detective Morrison with the county sheriff's office. We need you to come down and identify a body. A body? David Bennett, your ex-husband. There's been an incident. I drove to the morgue with my hands shaking, not from grief, but from something else entirely. Anticipation, maybe, or relief. Detective Morrison met me at the entrance. Mrs. Bennett, I need to prepare you for what happened. David confronted his mother yesterday evening at a gas station on Route 9. Witnesses say he was demanding money, telling her he needed it for medical treatment. When she refused, he attacked her with a knife. Is Linda dead? No, ma'am. She survived, but she's in critical condition. Here's the thing. Her boyfriend's son was there, Danny Rodriguez. He intervened to protect Linda and killed David in the struggle. It was ruled self-defense. I followed Detective Morrison into the morgue. There was David, lying on a stainless steel table under fluorescent lights. The man who'd chosen his mother over me, who'd stolen our future, who'd lied to me for 3 years. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Is this your ex-husband, ma'am? Yes, I said. That's David Bennett. I signed the identification paperwork and walked out into the November sunlight. I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no satisfaction. Just a quiet sense of completion. David Bennett had died exactly as he'd lived, violently, desperately, and utterly alone. His mother was crying in a hospital bed, but not for her son. She was crying for Eddie, the boyfriend who was now in jail for accessory charges. I walked to my car and sat for a moment, thinking about the past 6 months. The discovery at the bank that had started it all. The lies, the betrayal, the cancer diagnosis that David never saw coming, the divorce proceedings, where he'd begged and pleaded for another chance, the phone calls from Linda, demanding money she'd never earned, the slow deterioration of a man who'd chosen everyone but his wife. In the end, David got exactly what he deserved. He'd spent years putting his mother's fake needs ahead of our marriage, and when he needed help the most, she'd chosen her boyfriend over him. The poetic justice was almost too perfect to believe. I started my car and drove home.